Hi there, my name is Nell, like Belle, but with an N, and I'm so excited to talk to you about intentional inclusion, designing with disabled perspectives in mind. Let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself walking somewhere unexpectedly and found it harder to navigate than you expected? Maybe you're in an unfamiliar area and you're looking up directions on your phone on the fly. Maybe you're just walking along the sidewalk and it disappears. Those moments aren't just minor inconveniences, they're symptoms of a bigger issue, a lack of inclusive and universal design. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to the beginning. What is disability? And what does it have to do with sidewalks? I'm so glad you asked. That's a great question. Disability, as it is widely understood today, is not just an individual medical condition. It is an idea of social and cultural construction. Social construction theory originated in the late 1970s as the social model of disability. Mike Oliver coined the term, and he utilized the framework created in the UK by the Union of Physically Impaired Against Segregation. And they argued that people are disabled more by the barriers in society than by their bodies themselves. The medical model of disability, in contrast, says that disability is the individual's impairment, not a product of society. Through decades and decades, and I'm really glossing over all of the protests and advocacy of disabled people in our past, but eventually we led to the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, that was passed in 1990. That law provided the most extensive framework for civil rights of people with disabilities in America. And this was passed nearly 40 years ago, but data suggests that 73% of business storefronts are out of compliance with the ADA. And even more business websites fail accessibility standards. Compliance alone is not inclusion. This is why today we will hear from disabled perspectives across communities to understand what real barriers to inclusion look like. I'd like to first introduce Michelle Stokes. She's the co-chair of Arizona ADA Coordinators Coalition. She also works at ASU. Her resume is vast in her involvement in disability and education. She became deaf due to a medication side effect and has lived that way ever since. She says the ADA and usability are not the same. ADA compliance is only accessible to part of the disability population. No law can ensure that everyone can use public spaces. The ADA was designed when wheelchairs were smaller. It was also a negotiation between the disability communities and those who were required to comply. Michelle also talked about not only her experience with disability, but her husband's, who has a physical disability and is usually using a wheelchair. She told us it would be great if our street had a sidewalk. Then, when Bill wheels down to the corner store, he wouldn't have to travel on the road. However, there is insufficient right of way for a sidewalk to be installed. The city has recently installed hawk lights, which stop traffic to facilitate crossing the street that goes to a small store Bill goes to frequently. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Oceana Starr, who has a visual disability. She says, as a disabled person in my community, I feel it is difficult to navigate city streets where cars have no awareness that people may have depth perception issues. Crosswalks can be hard to navigate, especially when cars don't always give right of way to pedestrians. Because I cannot tell how close a car actually is, I therefore need to know if it is fully stopped to cross safely. Other barriers include certain types of door handles or locks that might have a difficult number code. Lastly, I'd like to introduce Samantha Blankenship, an ASL teacher who experienced a temporary disability this spring. In the beginning, my injury was very visual to the outside person. When I slowly got better, people started treating me as normal, even though I still needed a lot of accommodations. People assumed a lot about my condition based on how I looked. Disabilities are a spectrum. My disability is temporary, so I would be getting better slowly, but I would still need help. People assuming skill level based on aids hinder accommodations. Samantha's experience is similar to Emma van der Klint's in Being Realistic Isn't Realistic. and that temporary disability is not a comprehensive simulation of lifelong disability. It is a surface level immersion that cannot mimic the systemic discrimination of those with a lifelong disability. Emma's disability is described as a temporary physical disability due to a severe knee injury. She stated, in both recovery processes, I learned some things about inconvenience and limited mobility. But did I learn anything that would give insight into what physically disabled people like my husband experience? Not at all. Samantha also had this to say about her experience with autonomy in the medical setting. She said, don't assume someone's ability, especially in the medical setting. Physical disability does not equal a loss of autonomy. Ask before helping and assuming someone is incapable of performing a task. This does vary in different situations, but overhelping can be seen as a loss of autonomy. Emma Vanderklint and Norman talk about this in their book, the concept of offering help versus receiving help. And autonomy is an important topic in any disability discussion. And they really break it down and remind us to assume capability and offer assistance. This puts the disabled person you are trying to help in charge of the situation and their body. Lastly, Dr. Oceana Starr had this to add to our conversation. She said, I want to make society more individualized and make equity a priority. We often hear that it is impossible because we don't have the resources, and I simply don't believe that. Everyone has their own special strengths and weaknesses and can play an important part in societal structure. I believe we would have a much richer, more thriving society if we played to people's strengths and supported them with true equity. So now that we've heard from our disabled perspectives, what exactly is universal design? Well, the 7 principles of universal design were developed actually in 1997 at North Carolina State University. Ronald Mace headed up the group of professionals that came up with these 7 encompassing steps of universal design. The first being equitable use. That means everyone gets the same experience whenever possible to minimize segregation. Second is flexibility in use, supports various preferences and ability levels. Number 3 would be simple and intuitive in use, easy to understand regardless of experience, knowledge, or concentration level of the user. Moving on to 4, perceptible information, communicates information clearly and in multiple formats. Number 5, tolerance for error, minimizes hazards and the cost of mistakes. Number 6, low physical effort. It's comfortable and efficient to use with minimal fatigue. Number 7, and the last, size and space for approach and use. So it works well for all body sizes, mobility needs, and postures. Why lived experiences equal better design for everyone? Designing for disabled people improves the lives of everyone, and there's many examples of this. Some of them would include curb cuts and ramps, originally invented for those with mobility aids such as wheelchairs, now benefit delivery drivers, people who push strollers, elderly, children. Next would be closed captions, originally invented for those who are hard of hearing or deaf, now are great resources for those who are learning English for the first time, people who are neurodivergent or may have audio sensory issues. Next would be voice to text. That's used now as a productivity tool. And screen readers, lastly. It was used originally as a way for people who are blind or have visual deficits to be able to still interact with screened devices, now are great for those with communication difficulties, and honestly, all of us in general for productivity and ease of access. Disability drives innovation and creativity. Innovation improves accessibility. Accessibility benefits everyone. So, what can inclusive design look like? If we want to build a future that's accessible for all, here's some ways to start. Involving disabled people from the beginning. and test designs on real people, disabled and not. Pay disabled consultants for their time and expertise. Shift from compliance, the bare minimum, to creativity. Always center dignity and autonomy for everyone, not just disabled people. Think beyond physical needs, include sensory, cognitive, communication, and assume capability. Always assume capability and offer help rather than impose it. Inclusion is not about getting it perfect. It's about listening to disabled perspectives. It's about learning and designing with intention. And remember, small steps can lead to big changes. Start in your home, school, workplace, or even local government. Get curious. Ask, is this space truly inclusive? If not, whose voices do I need to hear? Thank you so much to Dr. Oceana Starr, Samantha Blankenship, Michelle Stokes for sharing their experiences and wisdom. Thank you for taking the time to listen and hopefully learn a little bit about intentional inclusion. See you next time. Bye.